So, to introduce then, this is part one of interviews with Roy Barley, the famous painter. And today,
That's a bit of an exaggeration, Nick.
in my world, you are. And today we're looking at your how on earth, it really stems from how on earth did you become a 15-year-old T-boy to a creative director? So just to set the scene, you are 15.
I've left school, yes, I'm
Yeah,
15.
and it's
Uh,
1950.
no qualifications. I failed my 11 plus,
Right.
and all I could do, I mean, I wasn't particularly good at academic subjects,
Yeah.
but I excelled at drawing and technical drawing.
Right.
I didn't know much about it, but I liked to draw. I'd never learned to paint properly because no one showed me. So what happened was that I decided that I'd go for a commercial art course, but I couldn't find any way of getting into the business. So my dad was getting a bit fed up with me.
Yeah.
So he said, "I'll get you a job at the quantity surveyor's office, and it's up to you then what you do." So I went for an interview and got this job in Victoria Street. Chap called a company called Selby and Sanders, and it was run by a chap called Cushing. He was Peter Cushing, the actor,
Yeah.
his father.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah, and he was a stuffy old gentleman he used to wear a wing collar and tie,
Yeah.
starched, and one of these pinstriped long jackets, almost morning suit.
Yeah. Almost
And
Dickensian.
oh, very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd think you were in the 19th century, really.
And this is 1950 then.
This was 1950. Yeah, about 1950.
Right.
So, after spending a wasteful 18 months or a year, I'm not sure how long it was, um, at the Selby and Sanders job, which was an office boy, got for me by my father.
Yeah.
Um, and I was bored stiff. Instead of going to classes, to improve my position,
Yeah.
I just went dancing instead, and I did that 3 nights a week.
Excellent.
Yes,
This was a quantity surveyor, wasn't it? And
yes,
you had no interest
no
whatsoever.
interest at all. The most boring job in the world,
Yeah.
uh, because it wasn't. It was mathematics, and frankly, it wasn't my best subject.
Yeah.
So I wanted to do something that reflected my interest, and the only thing that I was any good at was drawing and technical drawing.
Right.
Well, I had to, of course, bearing in mind I had to earn a living at some stage, so I couldn't just be fancy free. So what I did do was I drew mostly in my spare time, um, and tried to progress it that way. So I produced about 3 drawings, one of which, a portrait of Winston Churchill,
Yeah.
none of which survived, by the way. A pencil drawing also of an Alsatian dog,
Yeah.
and something else which I can't recall. But I had 3, and I went to an interview for a job, not knowing what I was going to do, with them rolled up in my pocket.
Right.
And I brought them out, and the guy who was interviewing me, which was this chap called Bill Smith, of Bill Smith Studios in Oxford Street,
Yeah.
he said, "What on earth is this?" I said, "There's my drawings."
It's almost
And
like your CV, isn't it? Here's my CV.
yes, that's right. Because I didn't know one thing. No one had helped me other than my dad getting me that job.
Yeah.
And I hadn't gone to anybody for advice.
No.
And I was in a sticky situation because I was 15 years of age. looking for a start in a career that I was going to be interested in. And of course, it was all uphill. And I got this interview, and he sort of almost ridiculed me. What on earth are these for, sort of thing. I said, well, I've just brought you an example of some of my work. He said, I see, and he'd flipped from one to the other. He didn't pass any comment whether they were any good or not.
Right.
So there I am. He said, can you, he said, you know what we do, don't you? I said, well, not entirely, no. He said, we produce ideas and finished artwork, which is then printed for various projects. Like, for instance, we've been employed to do a book cover design.
Right.
And I said, oh. Anyway, first of all, I had to go through all the process of learning. I couldn't do any lettering because I was unqualified, and didn't even know what it was. So I got into it by Bill saying, we'll go away and come back when you've done some lettering. So, and I wanted to get on with it as quickly as possible, so I was back within a week. I was living at...
So you'd already got the job, had you, by then?
No.
Ah, okay.
No. It was a sort of hopeful wish on my part that he would give me a job.
Right.
So I was still living in Hayes with Mum and Dad, and I came back a week later with some examples of drawing, of lettering rather.
Yeah.
And he said, he said, that's not bad. He said, but it's not quite right. He said, go away and do some more examples for me. So I went away again, and this time it was 2 weeks I was gone. And I came back with a hell of a lot of work.
Yeah.
Lettering. And he saw an improvement. And he said, he said, I want you to continue to do some lettering for me and bring it back when you're satisfied. He said, it doesn't matter about, how long it takes. He said, just give me a call and come and see me. So it was about a month.
So he was trying to make you do it perfectly, in other words.
Yes, I was trying to do all sorts of ideas, I was using a rule and all stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he wanted me to do freehand work. And eventually I did.
Were you drawing any particular typeface?
I was sticking to the one I knew, which was Gill Sans.
So did you have like a book or a poster or something with all the letters?
Well, I did, yes. I went out and I got myself a book of type styles.
Ah, right.
And so I reproduced them.
Yeah.
And anyway, it was enough to impress him to give me a job. He said, you won't be doing very much for a while. He said, because I'll need you for delivering work and keeping the office tidy.
Right.
Topping up the paints and doing this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
And cutting masks for finished work.
Yeah.
So he explained all that, so I was able to do that after a week or so. And then he started to get me interested in furthering my education by sending me to art school.
This is really interesting, and they had to pay for that.
I presume so, yes, because in those days, although a lot of it was free,
yeah,
but some things you had to pay for, like evening classes.
Yeah.
But I was day release.
Are you 16 at this point?
No, not quite. I'm still 15.
Still 15. Okay, so it's 1950, and we were talking a bit about what the employment market was like. And I think you said the Festival of Britain was coming.
That's right.
And so
there was a lot of excitement around.
Yeah. So it was not necessarily difficult to get a job.
it all depended, of course, what you wanted to do. I mean, you could go and work in a factory as a biscuit producer or whatever. But that's going to be. I wanted to work at the top and work down. Anyway, so there we are. I'm employed now at £8 a month.
Yeah. What was the what were the classes you were doing?
They were. I went to the London School of Printing and Graphic Art, which is attached to Fleet Street, where you learn how to produce work that is published or printed. So there are rules that you have to abide by, and things you learn about, like printing inks, types of printing, whether it be press printing or by photographic printing, which was, in those days, of course, they didn't have any colour in the papers,
right?
Other than on some advertising that just had flat colour, but there were no photographs printed. Anyway, so I went back. I was doing the daily studio manoeuvres, whatever they call them. Anyway, that's the hazy part, because this was when I was still slightly disinterested. I wasn't quite doing what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And okay, I was just about making a living, but nothing spectacular. And then, of course, Bill and his buddy, they weren't getting the work that they had hoped for.
Right.
And he had to let me go, because he said, I can't afford to pay you unless I get the work. And he did say, you can rent a desk space here. And I forget what it was, something quite reasonable. And, one of the works that he gave me, or projects I should say, was a music cover by, now what was his name? Meet Mr. Callahan was the name of the song.
Oh, so this is like a score.
Yeah, it was. It was a score, and they used to sell sheet music.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and I had to go to the place in London, which was just off Charing Cross Road. I designed this piece. It wasn't very elaborate. It was just a blue background, gradating from dark to light, with a bit of text on it, and it was signed by the author. So where am I up to now? Yeah, I'm up to the stage where...
Oh, can I just ask you?
Yeah.
We were talking before about airbrushing.
Yes.
Which was something that this commercial art studio would have done.
Yes.
Had you learnt how to do that by then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I had. And I did trial and error. I mean, I had a few goes and they weren't so successful.
Yeah.
Eventually I got it right. And when I moved out of Bill Smith Studios, because you've got to think about a 3-year interlude in the RAF.
Oh, yeah.
You know, which was compulsory. I didn't have a choice of not going.
No.
And so, but I thought I'd make it 3 years instead of 2 years because of the pay. And I'd met Kath by now. And anyway, so I got this job, this letter from this friend of mine, who had a desk space next to mine at Bill Smith Studios.
Yeah.
And I've stayed in touch with Jack for many years, even after he'd left the firm I worked with him for.
What was his name? Jack?
Jack Peppiatt.
Yeah.
Peppiatt.
But you've also omitted all your work for the badge designs. For the RAF.
That was nothing to do with him.
No, but I'm just saying that isn't this part of your journey? Is
oh yes, the badge design bit came while I was in the RAF.
Yeah, so how did that come about?
Because I'd designed a poster for a forthcoming dance
Oh yeah.
in the mess.
Yeah.
And so in the time I was in the RAF, apart from doing the odd poster and notice for everybody's consumption, I was basically employed to design station badges for the rest of the 90 group,
Yeah. And
which was
this involved going to the College of Arms or something, didn't it?
yes, that's right. Yes, I had a interview with the Ulster King of Arms,
Right.
Sir John Heaton Armstrong, his name was, and he was a charming old man, and he showed me various pieces of work that were being done by the college on private commissions for rich Americans. One of which the the main person they were talking about was Lady Godiva. I don't think there was there were any illustrations of her, but she was certainly mentioned in the text, and it was sort of illuminated text, gold paint and all that stuff. It was absolutely beautiful work.
Yeah.
Anyway, from there, the RAF term came to an end, and I got the letter just in time from Jack to say that there was a job going if I was interested at a small agency he did some work for. He was a freelance artist by now, illustrator,
Yeah.
commercial, and so I, once I'd gotten into an advertising agency, art department, and I had the power, as it were, to start to order my own artwork or get it produced. I used Jack a few times in terms of producing packaging with the illustrated products on the outside of the packaging, of course, which he designed, and I designed it, and he carried it out.
So give me an example of something that you might have worked on then.
Uh, Let me think. Hamburgers.
Yeah.
I can't remember. I'm trying to think of the name of the bloody company, but I can't think of it. Oh, this is hopeless, this old age.
You've got a bloody good memory. I mean, you can remember all these names, no problem, from 70 years ago.
Yeah, that's not bad, but it's rather limited.
But anyway, so it was a hamburger package basically, and you were doing the artwork.
That's right. It akin to bird's eye, something like that.
Yeah. And this artwork, there's no photography involved, is there? There's just
no. This is hand drawn and painted.
Yeah.
And he used spray as well. He was a retoucher. So Jack did work for me quite a few times in the various agencies I went to, and there must have been about 5 or 6 agencies I'd gone to in the course of my time. And don't forget, I retired from the business when I was 31. Thinking by now I was too old for some of the ideas that were being brought out by the younger people.
Okay, so that would be 1966.
66. I think it's up to about 64.
Okay.
1964.
But things were changing, weren't they?
They were changing rapidly. Yeah.
Pop art and the
That's
Beatles
it.
and all that.
Pop art was coming in.
Pop art, yeah.
And I remember we used to, in our art department at Macius, I joined a company by answering an ad, went for the interview, and it was a company called Macius and Ferguson, and it had been changed because a chap had won at a gambling game part of the agency.
Really?
Yeah, and his name was Jack Wynne Williams.
Yeah.
and he bought this. So I mean, I don't know how much it cost. All I know is that he won his share in a gamble,
Like a
and
card game or something.
yeah, and so the name of the agency was changed from Macias and Ferguson to Macias Wynne Williams.
Right.
So I worked for it when it was Macias Wynne Williams.
Yeah.
And Jack Wynne Williams was a big, very sort of effective man. You know, you couldn't fail to be impressed by his personality.
Yeah.
He was a large man himself, and he smoked cigars. He's flamboyant. Drove expensive cars. You could just imagine what sort it was. And so I sort of was in the hierarchy to a certain extent, in that I was in the design group. I wasn't a creative director. I was an art director.
Right.
Which is slightly different, because the art director concentrates on the art. Okay. The creative director brings it all together with copywriting and everything else. So
was it that the creative director comes up with the concept, and then you?
Yes, usually, but you can put your input in.
Yeah. As
I did with one ad. I can remember going to a meeting, and there were all these bods around, and it was scouring powder. And I said, why don't we just say cleans like a white tornado?
Yeah.
They looked at me as I was mad.
Yeah.
I said, well, it's, you
Catchy.
Can't describe it, can you? I said, it just goes in, you can't say white powder. I said, a white tornado. And they said, yeah. So once one said yeah, the others start to think it. And before you know where we were, that was chosen as the theme. Well, I can remember one occasion when I was visited, just as I was packing up to go home. This was gone 6 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And the doorman came up with a gentleman who was part of the Aspro group. And I remember his name. I remember him, but I can't remember his name. Let me think. Dawson Shepherd. That's it.
Yeah.
And he knew me, of course, from various meetings we'd had. And so he said, "Oh, hello, Roy." He said, "I've just come in." He said, "I want to try out an idea." He said, and he said, "I'd like you to stay behind a bit." He said, "And I'll fill you in the details." He said, "You can do some sketching for me." And I thought, "Oh, bloody hell!" I was, looking forward to going home. I had a busy day, so I said, "Yes, okay. What do you want?" He said, "Well," he said, "I want you to sketch an idea that I've got forming." And I can't even remember the bloody idea now. Something about headaches and aspirin. And so I did the sketches, and he was very pleased with them. They were unfinished. They were just rough ideas.
Yeah.
And so he would stand behind me and sort of move that over there a bit more. And so I did all that. I hate doing that, but there we go. So he dictated what I was putting down, and he was making a play to become the top man at Aspro, Nicholas.
Right.
But he didn't make it. So it wasn't Aspro wasn't my account, but I did work on it because there were times when you all clubbed together and you all participated in trying to produce a common ad or series of ads, because the amount of work was just too much.
Is this now you were working in where were you in London? It was one of the squares, wasn't it?
Yes, St James's Square.
St James's Square, yeah.
And the agency's Macias Wynne Williams. It's now something like Macias, Darcy, Dickhead and balls over or something like that.
Well, they're always changing, aren't they?
They are
they're
always changing. Yeah, there's always power struggles.
Yeah. What was it like? What was kind of the environment like? What were the people like?
Oh, it was great. It was great. It was very glamorous.
Yeah.
You get a lot of young ladies walking around in very, nice dresses,
Yeah.
etc.
Did you have to wear a suit?
No, yeah, I wore a suit. Yeah, I had a three-piece suit, waistcoat, stiff collar, and looked quite immaculate, really.
How much were you getting paid at this point?
About £2,500 a year.
So that from £8 a week.
Yeah.
That's a massive leap forward.
It is.
Yeah.
I did it by going to 5 different agencies, though.
Okay.
I worked my way up each time.
Yeah. So you were there reasonably short periods of time, and then got a better job each time.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was that sort of business, really.
Yeah.
It was last minute, and they reckon you were finished at 30.
Really?
Yeah. And even when I was there, I'm now, 25, 26, coming towards 30. And the young people coming into the art business, instead of wearing three-piece suits, were now wearing flamboyant silk or satin shirts, loose, no collar, no tie.
Yeah.
Baggy trousers or whatever. I can't remember the style. And the girls, their skirts were up to their kneecaps, or up to their hips almost. They're showing everything. And I had to go back. One lunchtime, I'd forgotten something. And I was walking along the corridor, and I saw this girl who I knew, basically to say hello to. And she was leaning over a desk.
Yeah.
And her bum was showing, and through a transparent knickers. And I walked in and slapped her on the bottom. I said, "Cover up." She was almost strip-teasing. And they were all, chosen for their looks as much as anything.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. But some of them were pretty bright as well.
Yeah.
And that's the advertising business. It was, up to date with everything.
Were there any women on the creative side?
Only copywriting, not so much art.
Yeah. So it was very much a male preserved.
Male-dominated, area.
Yeah.
What else can I say? Oh yeah, of course we were inundated with model agencies, because we were art directors, and I had to choose somebody. On one occasion I was doing the Will's Whiffs advertising campaign for Christmas.
What's that?
Will's Whiffs is a cigar.
Ah.
Small cigar, like a cheroot. Comes in packets of 5 in those days. And so I'd got this idea of a model dressed up in a Father Christmas hat, helmet, whatever you'd like to call it, but the rest dressed normally, but sexy.
Yeah.
And so I had to choose a model. And they sent me this book. And so I flicked through it, and I picked someone who looked, I thought, very nice. And she turned up for an interview, and I noticed that she'd got a big scar down one side of her face, which wasn't viewable in the photograph, for obvious reasons.
Yeah. And
it was such a shame, because it was, a bad scar. And I said, "God, how did you get that?" And she said that she'd been to a photographic job one evening, and she was driving home in her Mini when a police car slowly went past her and then dropped back, and then passed her again, and stopped her. Oh no, she went into the back of it. That's right. They pulled up abruptly, and she hit the back of it, and she was trapped because in those days the Mini didn't. It had a sliding window, if you remember, and so there were the police standing outside of the car, trying to open the door, and it wouldn't open because it was jammed.
Yeah.
And they thought that the car might catch fire, so they smashed the glass of the window and pulled her through, and her face caught the glass.
Ow.
And yeah, it just ripped one side. And I mean, you can imagine the police; they were absolutely distraught. They were just messing about, young blokes, and she was a looker. I don't know what happened, whether there was any litigation or what happened. Anyway, she told me the story, and I thought, well, I'm going to use you anyway because we'll cut out the bad side.
Are you now working in photography then more than?
Well, I used to go in for sessions with the photographer and try and get him to produce a photograph that I wanted in my ad.
Yeah.
So I would go to his studio, and he was good technically, but he didn't always know what was right. He wasn't art directing.
You wanted to compose the
Yes.
shots, in other words.
He wanted to compose it, but not necessarily to my way of thinking.
No. That's where you come in to
That's where I came.
Set it up.
Yeah, that's right.
Just like when you do your still lives, it's all about where you put everything.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So it's balance, colour, expression. You know, although expression is instantaneous, it's flash photography, of course.
Yeah.
They have the umbrella and it's well lit, and then you choose all the stills. You decide which one you're going to use, and he'll blow it up to the size you want.
Yeah.
And then you complete the ad.
Yeah.
And that's how it works.
So at this point then, had the style had changed, and so illustrated ads weren't really being produced anymore, and it was all photography.
Yes, that's right. The hand stuff was going out now. Jack was becoming less employable as they managed to make photographs so succulent and appealing that Jack's expertise was on the wane. What else can I remember?
Oh yeah, you did. You were involved in a on location.
Oh yes, that was the scouts and guides and brownies.
Oh right.
Guides and brownies.
What was the ad for?
It was for Weetabix, and we were on a river in Cambridgeshire. I'm trying to think of the location. It might be in Royston, somewhere along there.
How appropriate.
Yeah, and there's a little village nearby called Barley.
Yeah, I know. I've driven by them.
Have you? Oh.
Yeah.
And anyway, we had a crew of about 50 cameramen and directors, because they won't let you touch this filming industry at all.
No.
Even me as an art director, I didn't have any influence. They insist on doing their own direction.
Sure.
And they have about 5 people to work the camera.
Yeah.
It is controlled by the unions. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
But I didn't care. I was just doing my bit. I stood in the background, and I did occasionally. I said to their director, "Why don't you do such and such?" And he'd say whether he could or not do it, and give me a reason. So I said, "Okay, well." And then I spent most of the time sort of lunching, really. Well, it was only a day's shoot.
Yeah.
It started at 8 o'clock in the morning, or was it 9? Stopping for lunch, continued afternoon, and then I got home, I don't know, about 11 o'clock at night.
Was it a colour ad?
Yes.
So it could have been for cinema.
It might have been, yeah. I'm not sure I've seen it. I saw the takes, which were quite good. It's where it's a small village in the countryside with a river, but there's a boy delivering newspapers, but he's doing it in the American style.
Yeah.
He throws the newspapers across the lawn.
Yeah.
And fortunately, it was a lovely day. It was sunny and quite warm. And he's whistling as he's cycling his bike through these lovely thatched cottages and so on. And as he does, he throws the papers, and then I can't remember whether someone pops out and said, "Would you like some Weetabix?" or something like that. I know, but it was, it was a slightly out of reality.
Yeah.
But then that's what people wanted in those days.
Yeah.
They were trying to forget the war.
Right.
The war had such an effect on people that everything changed for the worse, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Well, rationing didn't finally finish until later in the 50s, was it?
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And that was tough. But you, as a kid, you just go on with it.
Because it was what you knew, and so you just adjust to it.
Yeah. That'll get him.
So, you got to the point where you said that in your 30s you were about done.
Yeah.
So you were thinking you probably had to get out anyway.
Yeah.
And then the thing with JB came up, and you.
Yeah. That's it.
So when you finished up at the agency, was it still the same name?
Yes, I think so. Macius Wynne Williams.
Yeah, he hadn't lost any part of it in a card game or anything.
No.
And were you still wearing three-piece suit at that point?
No.
Ah.
Okay.
All right. Cool.
Brilliant.
I hope that's all recorded properly this time. I think it has. I'm not doing it again.
Well, thanks for your trouble, Nick. That's very kind of you.
No, it's good for you, and it's going to be great for the kids and everybody, I think, isn't it? So interesting.
Well, I suppose that's one legacy I shall leave.
Yeah.